Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Aquaponics seminar. We will be presenting Dr. George Brooks Jr. today. My name is Dr. Yonathan Tilahun, and I am located at the School of Agriculture and Applied Sciences here at Langston University in Langston, Oklahoma. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the United States Department of Agriculture Capacity Building Grant, the 1890 Capacity Building Program, Langston University, Dr. Kent Smith, Dr. Wesley Whitaker, Dr. Tilahun Salou, Dr. Malcolm McCullum, Dr. Kamal Ghosh, and Mr. Chris Downey for support of the aquaponics program effort here at Langston University, and many others that allow us to continue that program here at Langston University. And before we continue, also, I'd like to request that everyone complete a poll following the seminar, just to let us know your interests and your capacity as far as how this seminar could influence your goals and your future applications of aquaponics. So with that said, please let me introduce Dr. George Brooks Jr. Dr. George Brooks Jr. holds a PhD in wildlife and fisheries sciences from the University of Arizona in Tucson, and served as the Institute's first aquaculture extension specialist. And Dr. Brooks is a pioneer of aquaculture and aquaponics and serves in many academic, governmental, and private capacities. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce my friend, mentor, and colleague, Dr. George Brooks Jr. With that said, Dr. Brooks, please share the screen.
Thank you very much. Mentor, that's cool. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here, and thank you to Langston University and Dr. Tilahun. It's been a pleasure to know him and meet him and to learn so much actually from him. The opportunity today, I sincerely appreciate. Now, we have very little time here. I've got about 45 minutes, and I have a lot to say. But again, thank you to everyone I see on the screen and all those who are listening from Facebook and everything else for giving me these few moments. Now, I'm going to share my screen right now, and hopefully the Zoom will decide to behave. And now to push the correct button. Can everyone here see my screen? Just shake your heads, yes. Okay, thank you. Today, I'm going to be talking to you regarding this thing that we call aquaponics. It's going to be from a different context, though, one that I hope to inspire you to actually adopt, or at least think about using. And that is looking at aquaponics not as just a way to grow more food, but a way that as an extremely powerful problem-solving tool that we can use to accomplish great things. So first, some introductions on my own. There are people that I would not be here if that wasn't for them. This is my wife, Angela. She is an urban farmer. She's working on her doctorate as well. But we have a small urban farm next to our home that you can see in the background. This picture was taken soon after we acquired the land, where we're trying to make a go of it. But her amazing input to me has been life-changing. I do appreciate it so much. And we have to come on. What's going on? It's not working. Oh, there it went. Okay. And we have 4 beautiful daughters that some of them have also taken up the social action issue, and we are appreciative and love all of them. But now, as the son of a preacher and civil rights leader in the 60s, that's my father there in the glasses in between King, or next to King. And also the son of, there we go. Also, the thing that keeps not wanting to work. All right. I'm sorry about this. technical issues. And also the son of a hidden figure scientist. My mother worked in medicine. The hidden figures were everywhere, not just in aerospace. And she worked on a very nasty disease, as you see here on the screen, called coccidioides inimittis, which is the cause of a disease called valley fever that is endemic throughout the Southwest. Back in 1955, when she worked on this, it was causing a lot of problems, and we still have not got a cure for it. But she was the first one to learn how to grow it in the laboratory. And you can't cure a disease unless you can grow a disease. Now, back then, the biological controls, they would shut the laboratory down if they used them today. But she got out of it because she didn't want to bring this home to her bouncing baby boy, who was soon to arrive. This thing still isn't working. Okay. Now I figured it out. So here's the thought. The value of a technology lies not in its bells and whistles, but in its great questions that it can answer, great problems it can solve. And I look at aquaponics in this manner, and this has followed me because my parents were problem solvers, both in the ministry and social action and science. So I follow the same way. And I've always looked at aquaponics and how can we use this to solve problems? And excuse me. Okay, back when I was faculty at the University of Arizona, back so long ago, back when I had hair, which I do wish I still had. But if I had hair like this, I would have a hole in my throat. It wouldn't look right, so I got rid of it. But back then, we were working on a particular kind of aquaculture in Arizona that just made complete sense for us. And it was integrated aquaculture, they call it today, or integrated aquaculture agriculture, where we make use, as it does today, of often unused resources on farms, such as ponds, or in Arizona, we have huge cotton farms, 100 acres, 1,000 acres, 10,000 acres, 100,000 acres in size that draw water from underground because we don't get enough rain to support agriculture. So it comes from underground or through canal systems. But we draw the water into canal systems. We move the water from where it is to where it needs to be so that we can irrigate with it. And these canals are everywhere and mostly unused. And so but also it makes the moving water expensive. And that drives up the cost. And agriculture is such a narrow margin industry anyway. So the farmers found out by pure accident, it's a long story how this accident occurred, but they found out that that they could actually grow fish in these canals. And so, such as they say in, I believe this is a Chinese proverb that where there is water, there should be fish. I had one Mandarin speaker tell me that I should modify this to where there is water, there must be fish, which I'm thinking about. But to solve this problem, what we did was that as the farmers had discovered, we put the fish into the canals, and then we began to study this and learn the best way of accomplishing this task consistently. Now, this must have been a cold day because I'm feeding catfish in this picture. I don't normally wear a long sleeve shirt in Arizona, but nevertheless, we began just in using the canals as they were established, but also we began to modify the system so that we could have small ponds next to the canal systems where we had the fish in cages and then water circulate over to a clarifier. Does anything sound familiar with a clarifier? And then the water free of the heavy waste would go back to the fish or to the canal going back to the crops, which could be cotton, citrus, or anything like that. Oh, by the way, I do need to mention this about that red hat. The words on the front of that hat were Kappa Alpha Psi. So it's a social statement. Later, we took it to one of our Native American communities, the Gila River Indian community, that's been very proactive as far as aquaculture in Arizona, with my good friend Ed Mendoza that I still work with today. And and with the Gila River Indian community, we did all kinds of wonderful things, including science fairs, STEM education. We actually got kids to go to scholarships to go to the university based upon aquaculture experiments with the tilapia eggs. But using this basic process of integrated agriculture, we built ponds, put tilapia in ponds, put giant freshwater prawns in the ponds, and then water flowed downstream to serve several acres of normal irrigated crops. And we grew great tilapia and we grew great prawns. The prawns on the right are the ones that we actually grew. The one on the left is from Indonesia, where they're native, but I just want you to see what a big one looks like. Oh, by the way, going back to the macrobrachium, the prices have increased dramatically recently. To buy the tail of a macrobrachium, a pound of tails down the street from my home right now cost me $19 a pound. I really must go back to this research. But this idea of integrated aquaculture, agriculture must be very powerful because it keeps getting reinvented over and over and over again. Not only from the Chinampas, I can never pronounce it right, of the Aztecs 1500 years ago, but all over the world. This is a farming system from China. They have complete books on how to do this on rural farms and such, and successfully, efficiently, so that the people have access to various kinds of foods based upon aquaculture. And in Africa, tremendous work going on there, extremely impressive work going on there. In southern United States, that's where we get our crawfish from, integrated with rice farming. And the largest fish farm in Arizona uses this process continuing today, and that is Desert Springs tilapia. This is an old picture. They have many more, it's far more developed now, and they're growing something like 4 million pounds of fish, including tilapia, catfish, and striped bass. Using water from a well, then they have geothermal water. It's hot water near one of our rivers, flows through the farm, and then the wastewater flows onto cropland for alfalfa, which it fertilizes and reduces the cost of the water itself so that they can get a better profit. Does anything sound familiar here? So, then there's the marine aspect to it. This is called integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. Same process using marine systems where you feed fish and then the fish feed a variety of products downstream. Okay, whether it be algae, sea cucumbers, oysters, all of this works. In fact, some folks call freshwater aquaponics, freshwater IMTA, freshwater integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. But then there's this guy. Not me, but the gentleman to my right. This is Dr. Jim Rakosi. He is the gentleman that is given the credit for developing the modern day version of integrated aquaculture that we call aquaponics. Now, when he first told me about the concept back in 2000, we belonged to the same organizations of the World Aquaculture Society, as some of you belong to. I'm glad to see you here. I was not impressed with the concept, but years later, and here this picture in 2014 in Seattle, I think I had to apologize and recognize the potential that aquaponics did hold, because he streamlined it, and by streamlining it, this is the UVI system that he is known for developing in the Virgin Islands. By streamlining it, by making it smaller, by making it more compact, easier to work, more productive, and less costly because you don't need all that land. It opened up the ability to have more and more of these in other places across the world where you may not necessarily have 1,000 acres of land to work with. Such as here in Arizona, same basic design. This one was near Tucson, but there's still but. This gentleman here, Dr. Clayton Christensen from Harvard University. I would like to have met him, but regrettably he passed away recently. He came up with a concept a number of years ago called Disruptive Innovation that has been very popular in today's startup culture. Basically, when you can offer a product that is simpler, more convenient, and less expensive. It opens up entirely new markets and takes over markets that some more complex production methods already had. But then he saw one more thing in that by doing so, it adds the ability to make social change. And we're going to get back into that later. But he gave the new concept here a name, catalytic innovation, which means it catalyzes social change and more things to be done downstream. Now with this, the city, and I'm going really fast here and I recognize that, but the city of Phoenix, this was very prescient with this concept as far as how do we create more food. Their challenge was creating more food in the city of Phoenix. The city of Phoenix, I'm bringing them into this picture right now because they are the 5th largest city in the United States. And every city in the US has to write a plan like this. This is their business plan for every 10 years. I was the vice chairman of writing the business plan for the city of Phoenix, 1.6 million people. And within that plan, we had the goal of healthy food for all Phoenix residents. We want to promote the development of systems that allow every resident in the city of Phoenix to have healthy food, and that includes urban agriculture. You see the 2 words down there that are calculated now in law, urban agriculture. So how are we going to do that? And this is particularly important for us because we have way too many of these things. This is from the Federal Food Desert Atlas. Every green area there, and the city of Phoenix is this area here right in the middle. This is the entire metropolitan area, about 4.6 million people. This area right here in the middle, this is the city of Phoenix, and we have far too many what are known as food deserts or now food swamps where people cannot access healthy food easily. You know, this is because of economics.
I live in Southtown there, Springfield, Illinois, part of the 1908 race riots. You should check this place out, sir. It's pretty bad.
Thank you, Randy. Now, I would ask everyone, and I appreciate your comment, Randy. I'll get back to you soon, but because we have so little.
Thank you, sir.
I got muted there by accident. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. All right. Sometimes because of age, but these are the areas where people cannot get healthy food. I remember getting on a certain bus in Phoenix where I kind of like to ride through my neighborhood to my job. I just like riding buses and seeing seniors get on this bus with an arms full of groceries, trying to get home and then to their stop, and then having to walk a half mile through 110-degree temperatures. This is a prescription for a food desert. And if we can use urban agriculture to help mitigate these wonderful, and the city has taken up the challenge. And because of
around the corner of me and put me down.
And the city has taken up this challenge by developing food plans for every part of the city. We have 15 districts in Phoenix, each of them 40 square miles in size, quite large. And this person right here, Roseanne Albright, is the person who has taken up the challenge. She's doing an incredible job of writing these food plans. And within these food plans are instructions on how every section of the city will be able to grow food there. And they include aquaponics. I think Phoenix is the first city to officially include aquaponics as a method of growing food for their population. But then came this thing. We all know it as the coronavirus, and the coronavirus showed us how fragile our food distribution systems were. Phoenix eats 3 billion pounds of food a year. Phoenix eats, and all of it comes from somewhere else. If the food chains break, we are in great problems, and across the nation we now have this problem of food insecurity because of that happening. Excuse me. And as PBS said, it's a hunger crisis. Now, we are looking at the pandemic and ameliorating it itself sometime in the near future. We're hoping with the vaccines and everything else, but the food issue is not going away easily, and we now know a problem that we need to solve so it won't do it again. Now, during the pandemic, people were looking at here in Phoenix and all across the world, how can we grow more food locally so we can be less vulnerable? And one of the solution sets was Victory Gardens. Now, if you're not familiar with Victory Gardens, they are from World War I and World War II. They were called war gardens, where the purpose was to grow all of the needed vegetables in your backyard for your family, if you possibly could, so that the big farmers could send all of their product to the war effort somewhere else. And because of this effort that was supported by the federal government, as far promoted, 20 million in 1945, 20 million people in the United States grew 40% of the United States food input. That was 8 million tons of food from backyards. And the business model worked because the idea, they didn't have to go to a market to sell their food. It wasn't about that. It was about growing the food that you and your family will eat yourselves. Now, people want to repeat that business model. Oh, let me back up for just a second. This is George Washington Carver, if you're not familiar with the individual, agricultural genius from the early 1900s. And he was at Tuskegee University. And before World War II, during World War II, he was writing as far as the victory of gardens. And his work was so influential that he inspired the federal government of the United States to change the name of the war gardens to Victory Gardens. So that's just a little unknown, unheralded US history right there. And so the Victory Gardens were designed so, like what we see here in Stockholm, Sweden today, every backyard could be growing enough food for their families. The average was 800 pounds per person, per family. Now, I wanted to find you a picture of what 800 pounds of vegetables look like. I couldn't find that, but I did find you a cow. So this is what 800 pounds looks like. The issue is that in those early Victory Gardens, as you see from Stockholm, people had decent backyards where they had enough room to maybe grow that 800 pounds. The problem today is that our backyards are postage stamps. If we're lucky, we have 400 square feet, not the thousands of square feet like you saw in the image a few minutes ago. So how can we possibly grow 800 pounds of food, since that was the average from the Victory Gardens, in a 20 by 20 space that we have 400 square feet in a backyard in Phoenix, particularly a backyard in a food desert. One thing about Phoenix, everybody got a backyard. If you're not living in an apartment, you got a backyard. So how can we, one of the problems of urban agriculture in a city like Phoenix is land. There's a lot of land. Phoenix is 510 square miles, 43% is empty, but that land is owned by somebody, or it doesn't have access to the necessary resources in order to farm it easily. So backyards are just kind of sitting there. Can we use them? 20 by 20 space if we're lucky. This is what a 20 by 20 space looks like. And so you can imagine trying to grow an 800 pound cow in a 20 by 20 space. So, how is this possible? And regrettably, in a 20 by 20 space, you can only grow with normal agriculture, raised beds, et cetera, like that, about maybe 200 to 270 pounds of food over a year's time period. Now, there are some outliers. Oh, here is a great family in urban Pasadena, California, which is basically LA, that is growing 6,000 pounds of food on their 1/10 acre plot in Pasadena. That works out to 550 pounds over a 400 square foot area, but that's not 800. And can we do better? with a little 21st century magic. And so the question that we had to answer here, which we're going to discuss in just a moment, well, I just said, okay, can we in 20 to 21, can we grow 800 pounds in a 20 by 20 space? And the answer is yes, using aquaponics. But we have to think about this a little bit when we did it. We started this project back in the January of 2020. This is my backyard. And I'm looking at my face in this picture, and boy, I have aged. The pandemic has run a number on me. I must get some exercise here. So, and we had to begin to reimagine how we did aquaponics. This is a paper I wrote that's published in Aquaculture magazine, where describing the process. We use a thing called design thinking. It's all the rage in universities right now and engineering schools, but it allows you to rethink how you do things and to come up with something simpler that can be more effective. And such as, one of the normal ways of doing aquaponics is using this classic system you see here in front of us. This is from the FAO aquaponics manual, and this could be deep water culture or media bed culture, but this is, this can be used, and it's normally used using an IBC tote, or et cetera, et cetera. It can be a little complex. That's one of the complaints. It can be taken more than a minute to build. It can be a little bit expensive. So going through this design thinking process allowed us to revise the recirculation system, use simpler parts. Revise the circulation system. We, instead of using the classic method of recirculating water, as we did with that classic system, we used something different from catfish culture called IPRS, Integrated Pond Management. So it has the same things that aquaponics has. It has a pump for water. It has the area where the fish survive. It has a clarifier that removes the waste, and then the water is circulated through an area filled with, in this case, algae that polishes the water of nitrates, just like aquaponics. So, and I also did something like this separately at the University of Arizona years before. So we could shrink this down from the 15 acres you see here to a backyard, we might have something. And by doing so, it allowed us to make use of a local resource that is going wasted. Pools like this are all over the country in backyards filled with green water, normally growing mosquitoes. Wouldn't it be cool if they could grow food? This particular one is in Chicago, Illinois, next to my, the neighbor to my cousin's home. And the answer is yes. Using design thinking, we were able to develop systems to convert these pools to effective polyculture aquaculture systems, not just growing lettuce, but growing anything we wanted. From fish, you see basil here, you see cucumbers, you see tomatoes, you see squashes, and this particular one you see in front of you produced 400 pounds of food. We later found that the rectangular versions were more space efficient, but they work just as well. And we were able to convert them standard deep water culture, a little bit deeper than normal, but 24 inches added a lot of oxygen space we didn't have before, allowed us to do some different things. And they worked exceedingly well, growing a lot of food, including collard greens, zinnias, a wide spectrum of things that people in my area wanted to eat, and a lot of fish. In this case, tilapia. We're currently working with catfish to see how well they work. And the idea was to be able to walk out your backyard, if you live in the food desert, grow enough of your own food to supply a significant part of your family's diet, hopefully at a cost lower than you can buy the same food from the grocery store downstream. As I said to my students in aquaponics, no $10 tomatoes, which is a bad habit people have. If you gotta grow, if your tomato costs you $10, you might as well go buy it from the store. You must try to grow your food for less than it costs for you to buy your tomato or whatever you buy from the local grocery store, because that's who you're competing with. The pools were 70 square feet, the square ones in footprint at 7 by 10. The total footprint was 108 square feet, working space around it. So inside of a 400 square foot area had been proposed, we could have 3.7 units. Now, naturally, you can't have 0.7 units, so please bear with me with the mathematics here. But you could put 3.7 units, and within those 3.7 units, at the when we did the actual test, we were focusing on getting 400 pounds out of the system. We got 271. So what happened? We had a heat wave. We had a week of 118-degree days. That's getting more and more common in Phoenix, Arizona. I've seen 122 when they had to shut the airport down. But recently, we have gotten more and more of these 118 degrees days, and that it rains havoc on your agriculture. Stopped a lot of growth, killed vines, and that means one more design feature we have to add in as far as a way to protect the plants from all of that sunlight, which was the real problem. But we're going with that number for our work experiment, our discussion right now, because it's a real number. We just did this. So 3.7 units, 271 pounds, 400 square feet. That means that in a backyard with 400 square feet, a person could grow more than 1,000 pounds of food. That's significant. That means the old-fashioned Victory Garden model could be implemented again in a small backyard. And National Public Radio had a really good piece that says that Americans eat 2,000 pounds of food annually. So of the kind of food that we eat, this graph shows you as far as the percentages of everything, we have the ability right now, today, based upon the kinds of food that we can grow with aquaponics without having to research nothing, 35% of a person's annual intake. That comes out to about 704 pounds. Back in World War II, they ate less and they were on rationing, but today we eat a lot. And that's very, very, very exciting because we can do some things with this. Now, the question is, what business models? Because this is critical, because aquaponics is a business. This is in the United States. We have to look at the economics, we have to look at the social aspect. We have to look at the environmental aspects of saving water. We also have to look at the economic impact of things. Because it's a backyard, how can we do this and get the economy of scale necessary to really make a go of this inside of a community? And this comes from an idea that Ron Finley, the urban gardener over in Los Angeles state, when he stated growing your own food is like printing your own money. Again, if the farmer can hypothetically get the cost of the food that he or she is growing down to less than it comes from the grocery store, that means that every time you go into your backyard to eat some lettuce or get a cucumber and you're not buying it from the store, you are saving money. A penny saved is a penny earned. You just earned that money back. Call it a solar panel for food. Also, you have to go back to the old-fashioned ones again, Victory Garden idea that says, can what you eat what you can. If we're going to be growing urban food, we have to understand it's seasonal. It's not going to be there 24/7 like you get it from the grocery store. So therefore, you have to be able to can your food and then eat what you can. This is one of our rooms in our basement. Yes, they have basements in Phoenix. This is the food from our basement. My wife has put this together and she's canned more than 600 items down here. I'm impressed, to say the least. But then there are other opportunities for community business development, economic improvement from this. Everybody, what time is it anyway? Oh, we got about 5 minutes here. Great. Everyone is going to have extra food. We had a house full of food. We grew what we wanted, but we couldn't eat all of it. So how can we get rid of this extra food in a profitable manner? This is where what are called food aggregators come in. The food hub is a food aggregator. It collects product, sometimes on contract, from small farmers like me in my backyard. They'll give me a fair price from it. They aggregate it, they bring it all together, they put it under USDA rules and regulations, and then distribute it to the larger community. It emulates the input from a large farm without having to have a large farm, but instead many, many small ones. And then the co-op does the exact same thing, except the co-op is owned by the farmers themselves. So many possibilities to build this inside of sometimes underserved communities for greater economic improvement and jobs in the areas based upon food. And the food is one of the primary fundamental needs of all mankind. And then you have all of the other aspects that come in. If you have a local farming community, you also have to have somebody who's going to supply you with the raw materials. Someone's going to supply you with feed. Somebody's going to supply you with equipment. Someone with broodstock, hatchery, nursery, grow out, processing, value added. All of these are business opportunities for someone in your community. If you have a business, you got to have a service. You got to have a university or somebody providing you with the knowledge. You have to have a lawyer if you're going to be in business in the United States anyway. That's just the way things are here. All of these things can come now inside of local communities within urban areas, because of a streamlining of something like aquaponics to produce food. Again, going back to Clayton Christensen again, streamlining gives you a chance to make social change. And Phoenix eats, again, 3.2 billion pounds of food annually. Certainly, inside of all of that, there's opportunity for a local food industry to be successful. And then there is the equity issue. I had the pleasure of working on a grant a couple of years ago called the National MBE Aquaculture Program. Our effort was designed to find ways of bringing in more people into aquaculture, more minorities into aquaculture, because at this time, only 11% of the farmers are other people. And we worked over a year with my good friend. She was director of Yonathan Roy. And it was a project of the Minority Development Business Agency, part of the Department of Commerce, where the grant came from for Florida State and for the southern region around New Orleans. And we traveled across the United States. And one of the biggest things they told us in our travels and finding out what was keeping people out of the industry was cost of entry, cost of education. The model that I just gave you can help to mitigate those issues. I had a chance to give this report in Honolulu at the World Aquaculture meeting just before the beginning of the pandemic. We barely got into Hawaii and then got back out. That was a scary plane flight. Everyone who caught me got paranoid. And then it can do one more thing. Aquaculture in the United States is at a low ebb because of our lack of new lands, and we're losing the ability to fund programs to create more students. And there's a possibility that aquaponics, if spread across bringing in new people, can actually begin to increase the number of fish and other products produced by aquaculture. And this is actually occurring according to the statistics. Again, this is a paper you can look up that I wrote in Aquaculture magazine. Just Google what you see in front of you. So to bring it to a conclusion, there's far more to talk about here. I have enough information here for 4 or 5 different lectures, each one on a different subject, such as the amount of food that Americans eat. How can we impact this positively? How can we in aquaculture use aquaponics to produce food for the rest of the world, let alone the country? This graph that you see is a very famous one that shows that world fisheries have topped out. That's the red area. So that for the 9 billion people that's coming, the only source for new fish is going to be aquaculture. How do we be part of that effort? This is just showing you a graph of that. And you see the United States is down here at the bottom in other, as far as fish production, for example. This is something from California. We produce so few fish in the United States that we produce about maybe 600 million pounds of fish in the United States, 633 million pounds. California by itself, if all the fish went to California, we couldn't feed that state. 9 out of 10 pounds of fish that we eat in the United States comes from somewhere else. We can begin to change the local farms, and many of them based upon aquaponics. So it is, since it is a method to actually grow food in urban areas. Come on, machine, work for me. And then there's you. My purpose with this presentation today, and very quick, and thank you for the time, was to hopefully to give you some different ideas. To not just look at aquaponics as a toy or as something I can do in my backyard, but as an actual economic solution that we can bring to improve our cities, our urban areas, our communities, and our families. And so with that, I thank you very much. I think I met my time. Good doctor, did I do so?
Yes, sir.
I promised you that.
Yes, sir. Sure did. And you hit right on time. So everyone is able to unmute now. If you want to ask a question, please do so one at a time. I will be monitoring that, and then you may ask questions. It's open. It's an open floor, or you can ask your questions in the chat box, and we can communicate that way also. Well, if nobody's asking a question.
I have a quick question. Could you guys show the slide on the filtration one more time? It was and if you can elaborate a little bit more how the filtration works, how the water stays clean.
Okay, it will take me just a moment to get back to that slide. So bear with me. I almost signed myself out just then. Oops, that was a mistake. Let me see. I'm going to try to get back to screen sharing here. There we go. Okay, there. And now I'm going to try to go backwards here and find. Okay, this is again a recirculation system that is used down south for catfish culture. It's called in-pond raceway systems. It is a large-scale methodology that we have scaled down for aquaponics. But it has allowed them to increase catfish production from like 5,000 pounds per acre to maybe over 15,000 pounds per acre. It's quite impressive. And I'm still looking for it here, almost there. There it is. Okay, is this the slide you were talking about?
Yes, and the slide before it.
And the slide before it, this came before it. Okay, well, we're right now in front of us. This is a classic aquaponics system for a backyard as described by the FAO Aquaponics Manual. It consists of a classic design of a IBC tote, a clarifier. Well, this one didn't have a clarifier, but an IBC tote and several IBC coats cut in half to form the grow beds and the sump. We found that these were very complex for people to learn, and now once you get good at it, it can do very well for you. But lots of people find them complex, so we considered it a question to ask. And could we do things in a different way that were simpler? And so we looked at this system again called the IPRS, Integrated In-Pond Raceway Systems. Again, this is a 15-acre lake you're looking at, but each one of these small sections you see right here, you see here, each one of them are separate fish culture units where they have a pump pushing water through.
Yep.
You have the fish culture area. You have a suspended solid area where the heavy wastes are dropped out, just like in a clarifier in your standard aquaponics system. And then the water is returned to the general pond where algae are used to polish the water of nitrate before it comes back to the fish.
It looks funny, but works.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate that.
But all that, the Kraken in the backyard. The monster, the Kraken.
Okay.
With all the PVC pipe going in every direction when people had first started doing the aquaponics in their backyards.
Yeah. Okay. What he's referring to is that some aquaponic systems had gotten so complex with pipes going everywhere, and miles of PVC. Every time you see a PVC pipe, it's costing you energy. Okay. Yep. And so someone coined the name a PVC Kraken as far as what these things look like.
State University guys did.
Okay. And so, and this was done one of the groups on the internet that Randy and I are both members of. But we got rid of all of that stuff. And we found that in the backyard, using those basic pools, it allowed us to make a very simple design where it does exactly the same thing you see here, except that instead of having algae to polish the nitrates, we have the plants, the usable plants that we normally grow in a deep water culture. And the great thing about this, the design was so simple and so easy that not only did it reduce the cost from down to about $700, it's still too much, but we're working on getting it lower with bulk buying, but it also decreased the time to build one of these from a week's to 3 hours. Yep. Once you get all of the parts together, a team of 4 people can put one of these together in 3 hours, including drilling the holes for the floating rafts. So I did that.
Kids come down with their families. Yes.
It can be a family affair. So for the questioner, did I answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much. Do you have like a picture of what it looks like when in different ponds or different pools that was used for this system?
Yes, I do. And if you would be so kind as to put your email address into the chat, I'll be glad to send them to you. I do not have them in this presentation, and it would take me a moment to find them.
Will do. I will write my email address right away. Thank you so much, Doctor.
And what you're asking for too, so I can remember what I'm supposed to give you. So is there
okay, will do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any additional questions?
Dr. Brooks, there's a few other questions in the chat box.
Yes.
One is not necessarily a question, but suggestion or a comment. Thank you for an excellent seminar on aquaponics. Mine is it's a question from the West Africa African chapter, and they asked if there's experience to produce more foods through aquaponics in Africa, and if so, they see collaboration to train women and youth on aquaponics for economic empowerment within that region. So is there?
Yes. Back in, I think, May 2020, I was approached by a good friend, my man who's become a good friend in the aquaponics in the African chapter of the World Aquaculture Society to give a seminar on that very subject that you just asked. And I was told that it was a great seminar, but I have learned so much. People in Africa are remarkably innovative. And what is this on my screen here? People in Africa, it's some kind of mark on the screen. I don't understand what's going on here, but oh well. People in Africa are remarkably innovative, and they have come up with ways to apply this integrated aquaculture concept. That's why I use that name instead of aquaponics, because it goes beyond what we commonly think for aquaponics into how do you use water more efficiently, how to use space more efficiently. I read a paper recently from Africa where they were, I don't remember which nation it was, where they mentioned that there were 10,000 small ponds and dams built across farms in their nation. and these farms were not being really used for aquaculture to produce more food, and how they should be used, and then the water flow on to the various croplands they have there. So these are ways of where we're using the same principles of aquaponics, but in innovative means according to the needs and the resources available in the area. Here in my area of Phoenix, we use a technique that requires 24-hour electricity. Some places it's not available, but you can still use the principles and use it quite well. You know, we had to in ours think of a backup system that would allow for accidental power failure. And we get those frequently here in Phoenix because we get dust storms, and they're like something out of a movie of the desert when these things come through Phoenix. They're quite spectacular, and we often lose power. So how do we keep our fish alive? If we want to have fish as a product, you got to do that because they happen several times during the summer. And we figured it out. But in Africa, I've been extremely impressed by the level of work that the people who are members of the African chapter of the World Aquaculture Society are doing. If you would leave again more information, we'd be glad to talk to you about that offline. But yes, the answer is yes.
There's a hand raised by the West Africa region. You may unmute and ask your question if you like. If not, there's another question. Have you integrated the prawns with the tilapia fish in the same aquaponics system? If yes, has it been successful?
No. Okay. Here's the answer to that question. We're just beginning this research. Again, I can show you a picture, but I don't have it in this particular presentation. But we did work on this at the college where I teach, which is Mesa Community College. And we try to put the macrobrachium into an aquaponic system of this type. We thought the grow beds would be the perfect place to raise them and to provide additional value from the grow bed. So we will be raising fish in the sequestered fish away from the roots in one place, and then we would have the prawns in the grow bed under the roots, and then we have the plants on top. And we would get 3 profit sources from that. And it could be a very powerful idea because there's no one, whenever you say shrimp, people's eyes turn green with little dollar signs, and they want to grow them, which is good because it was a wonderful crop. The problem we had was that, much to our surprise, and it wasn't in the literature, the prawns ate all the roots, which is a challenge. And so, but now, simultaneously, the prawns during the data were growing actually faster than they do in a pond. So we did something right. So if we can find a way to sequester the prawns from the roots and then deal with this dietary requirement that they had that really is not well known, because we tried to feed the prawns normal prawn food and they wouldn't touch it. They prefer the roots, which was counterproductive to have them in the grow bed. But we can solve these problems. Prawns will, Macrobrachium rosenbergi, and maybe other species of macrobrachium, such as Macrobrachium carcinus, is a species almost as large. We may have a powerful new product for urban aquaculture, urban agriculture in urban areas that are warm enough, because prawns do have to have warm water, and you do have to have a growing season long enough to support them so they reach a decent size.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Okay, can I go ahead with my question?
Yes, you can.
All right, thank you so much. I really want to first of all appreciate the organizer of this seminar. I must say that it's quite educative and very interesting. Thank you so much for that. To the speaker, my good friend, Dr. George Brook, thank you so much. It has been a very privilege to listen to you. And just like he rightly said, Dr. George has been a very good friend to West African region of World Aquaculture Society African chapter. I could remember last year when we were approaching, he gave a very wonderful seminar. Now, mine is just a kind of a request. We have a lot of people that are very interested in aquaponics in West African region, and there are a lot of resources, and our focus is on the women and the youth empowerment. If I may request, sir, if there's if it is possible for us to get a kind of a manual or educational training manual where we can have it in CD or in video to really train the women, particularly in the rural area and the youth. Why I'm saying so is because of their level of education. But you agree with me that these are the engine room of people that really produce food for food security in West African region. So we really need to come to their level to really, get the language they can understand. So if these packages we're really talking about can be put in a CD on a video for a practical demonstration, we will really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, my good friend, you just put me on the spot, but the answer is yes. We'll work on that. I look forward to talking to you in more detail. I think it can be done.
There's another hand raised by Mr. Harrison. Joe Harrison.
Yeah. Hi. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah. Thank you so much for the presentation. I think it's great. I've been following you online for a couple months now. My question is, as far as profitability, where in the United States, is it profitable? And it seems like the challenge is to get to feed the fish, to get the fish food, and to taking care of the fish. That seems to be the biggest challenge, because you make your money off of what I read, off the vegetables, but the fish can be expensive to feed. So is there a company that you can really examine and just investigate where this is profitable from a standalone point, not doing the education piece, but from a standalone point of just raising the food, raising the fish, and that's profitable?
To answer your question, the first thing that we had to do was to find a business model that would work on this small scale. And the business model has to include all costs, such as you suggest, as far as food was concerned, based upon the current availabilities. Now, as you said, that is challenging. We had to develop methodologies to keep the fish alive, and we also had to develop the methodologies to keep the fish fed properly. And it all can be done, but then comes that cost, because when you buy things on an individual basis, it can be expensive. Our preliminary economic analysis suggests that if the farmer, taking into account the cost of food on the small scale, which can be, like 50 cents a pound sometimes, depending on where you get the food from, as opposed to 10% per pound if you buy in bulk, as the big fish farms do, is a huge difference. That business model I described here has possibilities of working. If the backyard farmer does not charge themselves labor, as most backyard farmers don't. Now, and we're going to be testing that here in Phoenix in the near future. We're planning a large scale demonstration project where we're going to have 60 families. Hypothetically, if the grant goes through, we're going to have 60 families that are going to be using raised bed, a different method of aquaponics from this, and this method of aquaponics to explore the very questions you asked, sir, as far as how to do this successfully. But now, if farmers can band together and buy food in bulk, then the cost of your food drops significantly. I cannot give you a number right now because I haven't explored what the numbers are right now, but if there's some way to do this, so the food aggregator that I mentioned earlier, such as a food hub or a co-op, could facilitate that happening. So you have the challenge, in summary, you have the challenge just here in really knowing aquaculture well, because you also have the challenges in the traditional technologies where weren't really designed to grow fish as a product. They grew them as a source of fertilizer, but for example, if you look at an IBC toad, if you're going to grow fish as a product, you got to know how to get the fish out of there in an easy manner, and that's not built in unless you think about it. So, and then you have the food costs that you just mentioned. But when you solve all three of those, you can actually get close to profitability using this Victory Garden model and building from it. But on the short term, if you can find some friends who are also in the business and buy food together, then this will help you to begin to reduce the cost of the food that you're buying. Now, that's just a thought. I have to think about it for a few minutes, but that's off the top of my head.
Dr. Brooks, I think we're gonna close up the seminar.
Oh, darn.
Everyone, I put in the chat that we will be addressing all the questions individually by email. So please put your email in the chat if you're interested in any questions to be answered or contacts or anything like that. Dr. Brooks, can you put your email address that folks can contact you with in the chat?
Allow me to close out screen share here so I can get to the chat button. I'm now in the chat button where I just turned off the chat button. There we go. And I'm going to go to everyone and see which email address shall I use here. I think I'm going to use this one. This is my easy address. Don't laugh at it when you see it. I use this address because it always works. AOL always works and it's easy. And so you may email me there at your convenience if you would like, if you have more questions, or I can also be found on Facebook at this place here called NXT on Facebook, and you can ask me questions there as well. And I hope that this can be useful to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brooks, for the excellent presentation. Thank you, everybody.
May I have one last quick thought?
Yes, sir.
And that is, I'm very thankful to all of you for coming. I'm honored that so many of you decided to attend and listen to this humble person say a few words about his all too long time in fish farming. And I sincerely appreciate your being here. And also thank you for putting up with my stutter. I do have a slight stutter, but you put up with me anyway. You didn't leave, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Brooks. Excellent. Everyone, please complete this poll that I'm about to present to you before you leave. Also, I said in the chat that we will be addressing the questions. And so just put your email address if you want any questions answered for yourself. So I'm going to launch the poll right now, and it is going on right now. So please complete it if you can before you leave. And we will be ending this seminar soon. So if you want to discuss anything, Dr. Brooks, you may while we're waiting for the end of this.
If I had known, I would have saved that comment I had a minute ago for now. There is so much going on with the potential of aquaponics if we can use it as a problem-solving methodology. We do have the issues of aesthetics and things such as that. Oh, there's some folks from Arizona. Great, welcome. Okay. But we are just really beginning to learn the possibilities and things that we can think of. We have things like container farms as an example. Container farms have great potential as far as ways of growing food in areas where your climate isn't perfect, such as Chicago. I'm not from Oklahoma, perhaps Oklahoma there at the university. They can be, is a very interesting idea that's coming up. So there's lots that we have to learn, but it's going to be the public like you who provides us with the ideas for the researchers to try to figure out so we can make use of them and make it better for everyone.
Right. Well, I'm going to end the poll in about 30 more seconds. So I will then explain what we have polled for, and then we will end the seminar. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Again, as Dr. Brooks explained, we are honored and feel privileged that you did come and attend this seminar with your presence. Thank you. With that said, this seminar is completed, and I'm going to end the poll right now. So the poll said that, do you think the seminar was useful to your interests, needs, or goals? And it was 100% yes. And what is your involvement, aquaculture, aquaponics? 28% were just interested, 11% were novice applicants, 11% were independent producers, and 50% were academic institutions. So thank you very much. I'm going to share the results. And there it is. Does everybody, can you see that?
And everyone, please press your share chat so you can capture everything that was said.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, again. And we will see you in the next post. For another seminar, we will post the announcement, and hopefully you can attend that one as well.
Thank you, Langston.
Thank you. And this is at Langston University, and this is the American Institute of Go Research in the background there, but we are located at Langston University in Langston, Oklahoma, the School of Agriculture and Applied Sciences. So thank you very much for attending.
Thank you,
Goodbye.
Dr. Tilahun, my friend. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.